Next question, Jake, and this is one that really hits me because, like, I believe in it. Is parity bad for the NFL? And now a little backstory, like a little background on this for people who don't know. So, like, the NFL, compared to every other league, is built for parity, built for everyone to be on an equal playing field, to the point where the worst team in the league gets the first overall draft pick, second worst second, best team gets the last. And that's to create equal playing field, also the salary cap, all of that. And this is unlike teams like the NBA, who has a lottery draft, unlike the MLB, who doesn't have a salary cap. So the NFL truly is built for every team to go 500. And there hasn't been an example as good of that as this year, where, again, we talked about, like, pretty much 3/4 of the league are hovering around 500. We talked about, like, the dead teams are 3-4. And the great teams are 4-3. So it's really weird, but also, like, there's so much bad football being played. Like, and there's horrible coaches right now. Like, this year is hard to watch. So even though I think it's working by design, everything that the NFL is doing, I think it's bad for the league to have very few true powerhouses and very few people you can just kick in, basically. Few laughing stocks. We need Urban Meyer back.
We do need a little bit more. Well, you know what it is, right? And this isn't going to last, which I think is good news for your argument. We're in a current state of we care if you tank. Don't fucking tank because of what happened with the Dolphins. And that is causing the bad teams to try. This is like the first time that's happened in a decade where, like, there isn't some Houston. Like, I think the teams, like, if I ask someone, like, what team is trying to lose this year, I think they'd point to Houston, which shows you haven't watched a Houston game, because Davis Mills is trying his ass off, man. Davis Mills is trying to be a quarterback. He's trying really hard. And Washington, the amount of, like, Ron Rivera feels like he's going to be robbed of a Super Bowl. You watch a Ron Rivera press conference and he, like, is so sad at the outcome of his team. Like,
well, the Lions have the worst record in the league and they fight to the fucking end. Like, that's their whole thing.
Yes. They're so gritty that I didn't even, I can't even say the sentence, they're the worst record in the league. That's how gritty they are. But I do think my other maybe thought is, and this is me being an optimist, this has been really bad football. I think it might be a bit of a growing pain, because going through those teams, I think this is like the first time in a decade, at least 5 years, that we're, like, seeing the good teams change. And I think it takes the NFL a while to figure out, like, who to book. Because right now, what is happening is Green Bay, Tampa, the Rams, all of the AFC West teams that aren't the Chiefs, the Patriots, none of those teams are playing really good right now. Even the Bengals that people wanted to get behind haven't played great this year. And then it's like, well, who are the good teams? The Giants and the Jets. And no one believes it. Like, no one believes it, because it's like, fooled me once. Like, so it's not just that the football is bad, but it's that everyone can see that the good teams are bad, and no one's believing that the bad teams are good. So we're just stuck going, everything's bad, because there are no, like, our conversation, like, and I believe it, like, maybe I'm playing into it, but I'm like, there aren't very many good teams. And part of that is because I don't think any of these teams with good records are good, because they haven't been good historically. So maybe this is, even the Eagles, like, the Eagles haven't been this, like, they're finally coming into their own. So maybe for the future, it's those three teams and the Bengals, and, maybe the Jets are good, like, going forward. Maybe the Giants are that good just going forward, or the Vikings. Like, if they, if they win the division 2 years in a row, it'll be the first time they've done that since, I believe, late 2000s. So like, I think there's a bit of a paradigm shift there of like, the old quarterback regime is slipping a little bit. And I think that's happening at this same time.
I think it's partially that, and to like be super truthful for like why I think there is worse football being played. Like I think there is criticism from like some of the better teams that are usually bad, but also we look at like we had a record amount of head coach firings last year, so it's a lot of new coaches, and obviously we know a large percentage of new coaches are going to be bad. So
teams super young this year. It's like a really young average age.
So it's partially that stuff. And then with the salary cap, people are figuring out how to do new stuff. And because of that, the last couple of years, there's been more salary cap casualties than ever before. Like you look at the Saints, I think the Saints again are projected to start the season next year like $90 million over the cap. And they just cut everybody last year. So they have to do it again. Like everyone's pushing things forward, and people are talking about how the salary cap's fake. You can make anything work. And you see it eventually catches up to you. And it's not necessarily like you can't get good talent on your team, but just continuity and knowing like chemistry wise and stuff like that. Adding in with that is the lack of one other preseason game. You cut that. So then teams are starting off slower. The last cutting out a preseason game also cuts out a lot of players' opportunity to make teams that are usually the special teams players. So you see a lot of bad special teams play. There's that kind of stuff going on. And then truthfully, like teams are kind of starting to pay offensive linemen as well, which is causing offensive linemen to shift teams. And you can see the good teams this year have good offensive lines, and there aren't many good offensive lines. And the biggest characteristic of good offensive lines, again, is good communication, good continuity, good all of that. And when everything continues to shift and change, including coaches and players and schemes and yada, 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 you have the Packers having Royce Newman turn around backwards when it's a zone scheme, when literally all you have to do is step right and then anything else you do is gravy. So I think there's a lot of things culminating, but it's like there's a lot of shit happening right now.
And here's the thing. There's so much parity that every game is close. And I honestly believe this. When every game is close, the reffing sucks. You need to give these refs some garbage games.
Yeah.
Where it just doesn't matter. They don't have any, and every game close. So every call matters, and they fucking blow it every time.
Mm-hmm. Every single time.
The Washington Packer game was terrible this week. This is a Packer fan telling you that was two bad teams. They were really, really bad. And that reffing was gross.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, both sides as well. We're not saying
yes, equal. Like, and it's because the game was close.
Right. Yeah. It's just an absolute nightmare. And again, I think people would be, less angry with refs if there was some sort of consistency, but they're all bad at different things. So it's a nightmare.
Right. And it's just like, if you have some of these, we just need more. And we're talking about it more because you only care about ref calls when the game is in question.
Well, also because sports betting is more legalized across the country. So now people have literal money invested in teams and just personal investment in teams that they never had investment in before. So now reffing is really under a microscope.
If you're wondering why I'm so mad about it, it's because I had to spend 20 minutes trying to explain to our whole extended family this weekend what the penalty was for defensive lineman holding, because they never fucking call it, and they called it on the Packers, and they were like, that's never been a rule, and I had to be the guy who was like, it actually is a rule, but they never call it. Well, then why did they call it now? I don't know. And then they're yelling at me about what a nose guard typically does. It's like, how's he supposed to do his job? And I'm like, I know. I very much know. And it's one day in lineman training camp where they're like, this is technically a rule, and nobody cares. Like, but they cared that week, so we have to live through it.
So annoying. But yeah, I mean, spot on. Parity across the league. League's been as equal as it's ever been. It's been as bad as football as we've ever seen. Also, maybe the guardian caps. I think maybe that's made everybody soft and bad at football. That's me. That's the old school me. We need to hear the cracking of the pads every fall, every late summer day. That's what gets us going. We haven't heard a crack of a pad yet, Jake. We've only heard the crack of Tua's skull against the ground. And that just brings a tear to my eye out of happiness, but it doesn't get me ready for football, Jake. And that's why every team is sleeping. Aaron's in an ayahuasca nightmare. Tom Brady is dreaming of his wife that left him. No one's ready for football yet.
No. Russell Wilson's feeling dangerous. Justin Herbert can't feel his ribs. It sucks, dude.
Yeah. It's stupid. Let's go to the next question.